Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, guys. Today is going to be a great episode with Randy Johnson of Utah of HighDesertSheepGuides.com. And Randy's been around, been a guide, been on over 150 different sheep harvests, and has a wealth of knowledge from the state of Utah and all over the world. And is just a fantastic guy. Before we get to that episode, I wanted to remind you that the June Insider giveaway for GoHunt.com Insider is 5 Kuiu tents. And in their promotion here on GoHunt.com, the giveaway details, it says we're now another month closer to hunting season. That also means another month of Insider giveaways to show our appreciation to our Insider members. The Go Hunt team will even give more great products in June. This month we have 5 Kuiu Mountain Star 2-person tents from Kuiu. Total value of $2,250. And the tent details: the Mountain Star 2-person tent is a freestanding double wall 3+ season tent with exterior pole design. The tent works great as a lightweight backpacking tent that can also handle any weather thrown at it in the mountains. At 3 pounds 3.3 ounces, with carbon fiber poles, tent body, fly, and poles, freestanding, unique suspended double wall tent design, fully taped seam on fly, tub, and floor, double hoop and truss design, removable tent body for fly only, and fly and footprint pitch. This tent is a phenomenal tent, and all you have to do is be an Insider member to have a chance to win. And 5 Insider members are going to win this tent. And in recent months, GoHunt.com Insider has given away 5 Browning X-Bolt Hell's Canyon speed rifles, 5 Zeiss 10x42 Conquest binoculars, 2 Coues deer hunts in Mexico with Dar Colburn and myself, 4 landowner tags, 1 Doll sheep hunt with a retail value of $22,500, 100 phone scope digiscoping adapters, Kuiu sleeping bags, Kuiu backpacks, and the list goes on and on. All you have to do is be a GoHunt.com Insider member. Make sure to use the JScott promo code and you'll automatically get a $50 Kuiu gift card upon signing up. Guys, we have some dates and deadlines that I want to remind you about. We've got tentative draw results for Wyoming deer, antelope, and resident elk. Here in mid-June, we've got the tentative draw results for Montana moose, sheep, goat, and bison. Make sure to get your Arizona sheep, deer, bison applications in by the deadline Tuesday, June 14th. Also here, June 20th, the results are out for Idaho deer, elk, and antelope. So don't miss out on these dates and deadlines, and make sure you get your applications in for Arizona for deer, sheep, and bison. There's really no reason a non-resident should not apply now, being able to apply with the credit card, and now getting a bigger, not a bigger percentage, but you don't have to have max points as a non-resident in order to draw, so make sure you get your Arizona application in. Guys, I also want to remind you that GoHunt.com has a bunch of tags for sale. If you just take New Mexico alone, again, you can go on GoHunt.com and see their tags for sale. They've got a New Mexico Unit 34 private land only elk tag, $6,750. A New Mexico Unit 15 muzzleloader elk tag in October for $6,300. New Mexico Unit 36 private land only elk hunt fully guided, $8,900. You've got a New Mexico Unit 45 rifle elk tag, $2,700. New Mexico Unit 12 private land only elk hunt, fully guided, $7,500. There's several Unit 12 hunts here. One's for 5,500. You've got New Mexico Unit 4 muzzleloader deer, New Mexico Unit 10 archery elk tag semi-guided for 3,250. There's just a lot of different hunts here for all sorts of price ranges. There's New Mexico Unit 56 private land only antelope hunt fully guided for $3,000. Um, there is a New Mexico Unit 4 fully outfitted rifle elk hunt for 6,600. A rifle cow hunt in Unit 12 for 1,600. So make sure you go to gohunt.com and check out. That's just New Mexico alone. Check out all the different hunts all over the western U.S. I'd like to thank my sponsors, gohunt.com, Insider, the Outdoorsman's, Wilderness Athlete, the Utah Hydrographics, Phone Scope, and the Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines. And you'll hear throughout this episode different commercials with using the J Scott promo code. You can receive discounts through all of these companies. And I appreciate you guys, all your support. I get feedback from the sponsors of you guys using the J Scott promo code and supporting these fine companies. And I appreciate all you guys, the listeners, and I really appreciate all the feedback that I get through my email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com and on my Instagram account through the messaging there. Also, you can follow along on my Facebook page, J Scott, and on my YouTube channel. Dara and I have a YouTube channel, J Scott Outdoors, and it's gaining traction every day. Guys, I would like to ask you guys to, if you haven't, go on iTunes and give us a positive review, give us a 5-star rating, leave some positive comments. That helps our placement in iTunes. And I'd also like to announce that we have just at the J Scott Outdoors podcast passed 2 million downloads. And that's, to me, an unbelievable number. And I just want to really thank you guys for your support. And I get emails every single day cheering me on and with very positive comments. I also get emails with people you want to hear on the podcast, and Randy Johnson was a bunch of you have asked for Randy Johnson to be on the podcast, so you're going to get to hear a great episode today with him. And if you want to hear any special topics or any people, just give me an email. If you've got any questions, I'm constantly answering questions about optics and about backpacks and gear and what to apply for. And feel free to email me with any questions that you might have. So let's get right to this episode with Randy Johnson. Welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got Randy Johnson of High Desert Sheep Guides out of Utah. Randy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Beautiful day out here in Utah.
What part of Utah do you live in, Randy?
I live in southern Utah in a little town by the name of Marysvale.
Okay, and are you familiar with that I drew the Utah beaver archery elk tag? Is that anywhere near where you live?
I am familiar with that. My friend Ryan Olson told me, and I believe I saw something on Instagram, the beaver Arctusher Mountains. It's right in my backyard, Jay, and you're going to have an incredible hunt. There's some great bulls up there, and you're going to have a fun experience.
I'm looking forward to it. How does the Beaver Mountain, how does that unit compare to, say, the back in the heyday, which I assume was 8 or 10 years ago? It seemed like every unit in the state of Utah was really producing some big bulls. How do you see the unit compared to the heyday?
The Beaver Mountain would still have to be considered one of the top elk units in the state. There are 4 or 5 outstanding units, but the beaver has a lot of thick cover, and that's why some of these bulls get as big as they do. And then it's also in close proximity to three other great units, the Mount Dutton unit, the Boulder unit, and the Pavant unit, along with the Monroe. And so you get a lot of transference of bulls, especially during the rut, who just take off from one mountain range to the other looking for big herds of cows.
Randy, in your experience up there, the season dates this year in Utah, I believe, are 5 days later. I think it goes to the 16th of September, whereas last year, I believe it ended on the 11th. How much importance do you think that additional 5 days plays in the archery elk season compared to other years where the seasons tend to end pretty early?
Those additional days will probably make all the difference in the world of hardcore archery hunters like yourself. Those last 4 or 5 days, those bulls should be right in the heart of the rut and just going crazy, and so that will provide a much greater opportunity for you archery hunters to find the bull that you're looking for.
Normally, when do you first start hearing your bugles up there on the beaver as far as a timeline? Is it late August, early September? When do you kind of start hearing them?
We'll start hearing them late August, early September. A lot of times I'll be with a mountain goat hunter early on in September, and the bulls are starting to go crazy then. And you get a little cold weather, as you know, Jay, it triggers that rut. If you get a cold snap a little bit early, definitely the bulls will start.
Any of that country where the mountain goats, I mean, are there elk all the way up where the mountain goats live as well?
You bet. Yesterday I was about 12,100 feet, just on a little, or a big hike, I guess you would call it. And there's lots of snow up there right now, and I was seeing elk clear up at 12,000 feet with the goats. I was really surprised.
That's fantastic. And so are those elk migratory, meaning that they'll just follow that snow line and go as high? I mean, were they standing in snow, or were they in the open patches, or, what kind of, where did you see them?
They were in the open patches, but it seems like as the grass and different vegetation starts to green up, where the sun has melted some snow, they're on top of it very quick. And so they were right on the edge of the snow line where there was good green feed.
That's awesome. What kind of expectations as far as trophy quality in a day's hunting, depending on where I'm at in the beaver unit? I mean, you think would it be common, say, the last 7 days of the hunt to, hear multiple bulls bugling kind of here and there, or kind of maybe first hour, last hour? What kind of expectations? And as far as size quality, will I be seeing a lot of 320, 330 bulls and an occasional 350, or will I be seeing 300s to 310s and occasional 330, 340, or is it better in seeing 330 to 350s and an occasional 370?
You'll have multiple bulls just bugling all night, morning, in the middle of the day. My dad is fortunate enough to have a cabin right here in the heart of the unit without anyone around. He's on a patented mining claim, and that time of year, a lot of the bulls come off of the tops down into that thick timber, and we'll just sit out on the deck of that cabin and listen to those bulls bugle all night long. But as far as the caliber, you'll see bulls in that 330 range for sure, but you should have a realistic expectation of taking a bull from 350 clear on up to 400. I've seen archery hunters on this unit, take 380 bulls, 390 bulls. I had a hunting friend a few years ago take a really nice 375 bull not too far from our cabin. So it's just a great hunt for archery hunters. It doesn't matter where you're from. You're going to see some great bulls.
In your opinion, other people have said that the heyday of Utah 8 or 10 years ago, that the beaver somewhat is still in that heyday, and they've alluded to the thick timber that you allude to, as well as the mountain being pretty rough. So do you feel like the overall quality has not dropped that much from when Utah was really on top of its game for big bulls?
I agree. I don't believe the quality has dropped that much. You may not have quite as many numbers of big bulls, but the big bulls are still there, and you could find one. It's a big unit from the south end clear to the north end, but there's some rough country there, and I think those hunters who concentrate some of the rougher country probably have a better opportunity of finding one of those bigger bulls.
That makes sense. Randy, I've had a bunch of requests actually on my podcast. I ask the listeners to let me know who they want to have on the podcast, and your name has been brought up several times, and so I'm anxious to have you on here today and talk to you. You have a ton of experience. I'd like to ask you to give me a introduction, a 30,000-foot view introduction of yourself, and where you're from, and how you got your start in hunting and life, and just give me a intro here.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I'm a Utah boy, born and raised southern Utah. Grew in a small rural area. Marysville, as I told you, is the little town that I live in, and that has been my home my entire life, other than those years when I was going to college, and I played athletics in college, and so during that time I didn't live here. But my grandpa was a die-hard mule deer hunter, fairly legendary in these parts, and just after I could barely walk, I was going with my grandpa and my dad, who also loved to hunt on this mountain, and they taught me and gave me a passion for hunting. And then as I grew, I took that to another level, and I began to explore a lot of the desert terrain in Utah, looking for sheep and big mule deer. I just wanted to get away where I didn't feel like other people went, and so I became a hardcore backpack hunter and learned a lot of country where people just weren't going at that time. And then I had people start to ask me if I would guide them, because some of this country was where desert sheep live, and they knew that I was very familiar with it. And some of it's fairly dangerous country, so that's kind of how I started guiding, was with sheep hunters, and then I have taken the occasional elk hunter and buffalo hunter and goat hunter through all those years. I guess in some parts of the desert country here in Utah, I was a little bit of a legend because of my knowledge, and I just loved all of that time. And I was fortunate enough in 2010 to be inducted into the inaugural Full Curl Hall of Fame in Salt Lake City. And then I've been a lead field editor for iReview Gear for a number of years, and a staff member at Altitude Outdoors, and I do some consulting for Worldwide Trophy Adventures. But actually, Jay, I worked for 4 years as a school administrator, but my passion has always been hunting.
That's fantastic. I know you have just a burning desire to be out in the sheep woods, in the deserts out there. Tell me a little bit about Utah's sheep herd, and how is it going? I've been noticing, I apply every year, but I've been noticing that seems like there's been some pretty good rams being killed, and the herds seem to be thriving in lots of places.
Well, genetically, we'll never probably be as good as in Arizona or Nevada or California, but we do have a couple of units where there was an infusion, a transplant of sheep from Arizona and from Nevada, and those units are producing some pretty darn solid rams. If you can take a 1-70 ram in Utah, you're taking a phenomenal ram, but we do have a few rams that will get bigger than that. Overall, we've had some units in Utah that are actually hurting right now because of lions and a little bit of disease, but we have 4 or 5 units that are very healthy. It's tough to draw a tag there, but it's a different hunting experience in Utah than it is in Arizona. There are some of those units that are backpack type units, and they can be, I guess, an incredible sheep hunting experience for those people who look forward to that kind of a hunt. But overall, our desert sheep are doing all right in Utah, but they will never reach the caliber of an Arizona or Nevada.
Yeah. Randy, do you have hunts that you're going to be guiding coming up this fall, or your own personal hunts? I know I saw a video of you shooting a Wyoming ram, I believe, last year. What do you have on scheduled here this fall on the books? Do you have anything that you're looking forward to?
Boy, I do have some just great hunts that I'm looking forward to. This summer, I'm going to run back down to California myself on a wild boar hunt with my good friend Ryan Olson of White Bone Creations. We're just looking for a big boar, and the drought and some overhunting in some situations has hurt the quality down there. But we just go out and have a fun time and get off the beaten path. And whether it's hot or not, I'm going to run back down there and we'll see if we can turn up a big boar. And then I have a number of sheep hunts here in Utah. And every sheep hunt's an incredible experience for me, but a couple of them that I'm really looking forward to. I have a desert sheep hunt with a 78-year-old hunter from Idaho who actually completed his full curler Grand Slam here in Utah last year, and then he won a hunt at the Western Hunting Expo. I don't know what the odds are of doing that. And so he phoned and he says, will you guide me again, Randy? And I said, sure. But this gentleman, what makes him special is he flew 168 combat missions over Vietnam.
Wow.
And that's where he started his sheep hunting, was when he was in the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel. He was stationed in some of those Asian countries and started sheep hunting and has just loved it. Now 78 years old, he's still doing it, and we're hoping that we can find him another big desert ram this year. And I have a gentleman from Ohio who's never hunted sheep in his life, who drew a road hunt sheep out here, and we're going to show him a fun time. So those are some sheep hunts that come to mind that I'm excited about, and I'll be out on the mountain with a buff hunter and some goat hunters, and a gentleman who has liver cancer who drew up here, and that will present a few challenges, but we still believe we'll find him a nice bull. And then I've got an oddad hunt of my own scheduled next March out in Texas with Jim Breck Bean. So I try to stay busy just like you do, Jay.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great fall coming up. Let's take a quick break here, Randy.
Thank you.
GoHunt.com Insider is by far the most valuable tool a Western hunter could give themselves. GoHunt.com Insider are the industry leaders and #1 source for Western hunting for a lot of reasons. GoHunt.com Insider have changed the game for how hunts and hunting information are found. Within a matter of minutes, using Filtering 2.0, you'll be able to filter by state, species, residency, odds of drawing a tag, specific hunting dates, and harvest success percentages to find the hunts that fit exactly what you're looking for. If you are a guy that applies across the West or just in your home state but want to find some new opportunity, there's no better way to do it than using GoHunt.com Insider. As an exclusive offer to my listeners, if you sign up for a GoHunt.com Insider membership for $149 a year and use the promo code JScott at checkout, you'll receive a $50 KUIU gift card. Head on over to GoHunt.com/insider and get yourself the most valuable membership a hunter could have. I have known the owners of the Outdoorsmans in Phoenix for over 20 years. They are the authority on optics and hunting gear. Outdoorsmans is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods, mounting accessories, and pack systems for all hunters. Their customer service is the best in the business. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code to receive 10% off any Outdoorsmans products. Randy, I was noticing on your website that you had found the sheds of the Buck of Justice. Can you give the listeners a little bit of a background on that buck and kind of the story and everything behind the Buck of Justice?
You bet. It's quite a story, and I guess as I begin this, I'll just premise my thoughts, Jay, with my own personal belief that, taking a giant mule deer buck is still probably the most difficult challenge in North America, just because of where they live, and not that many get to be what we would call giants. But the story of the Buck of Justice started for me way back in the early 90s when I was getting out in places scouting and looking for desert sheep and big mule deer, and these were very remote places, backpack type desert terrain. And I'll never forget, it was about the middle of June 15th to be exact, of 1993, and I was on a solo backpack hunt, and I was doing some glassing, and there were these 7 giant mule deer bucks, and it's only the middle of June. They don't have their full growth at that time, and off the side of these big bucks there was this one lone buck, and I had never seen anything like him, and he still didn't have that full growth, and I knew that I had to go into that area and hunt. And as I started to do my homework, I started to find a shed antlers, and I hadn't found a shed antler from him, and finally I figured out where he was spending his time and dropping those antlers. And so my younger brother Lane went in with me, and over a number of years we found the first set there in 1994, and we found 2 or 3 others off the same side, and then it took several years to find all the matching sets, but we eventually actually found 5 sets off of him, and 2 other individuals found 2 other sets that I'm aware of. I've never seen a mule deer buck with those kind of antlers. The mass on this buck was just unreal. The biggest set that we found, the 3 biggest sets, which scored 288, 284, 274, and he had bases, Jay, that were 8 3/4 inches, and his antlers looked like an elk antler. And I just tell people, where this buck lived, I believe there was some prehistoric genetics down there, and longer growing period, a very hot area, highly mineralized, and after a while, people started to figure out where some of those bucks were living, and there was never great numbers in that particular area, and so that hurt it as more hunters started to hit it. But I hunted that deer for 10 years myself, and I only saw him twice while I was hunting him, once on a muzzleloader hunt in a snowstorm, and he came up out of his bed in a thick patch of pinyons, and I just didn't get the shot off. I'm still kicking myself, but perhaps it's appropriate that his legend goes down is that he never was killed. A sheep hunter actually ran into his last set of sheds and his skeleton, and and didn't actually realize what he had found until people started telling him. And I can't believe I missed that last set of sheds because I'd been past that particular place a lot of times. But I went back in because it meant so much to me. I spent 10 years of my life, and I found that skeleton, and I packed these bones out. It's kind of an interesting side story. What a buck, though.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Unbelievable story. A couple questions that come to mind when I hear that story, and just I'm not a very big shed hunter, but it's always curiosity always gets me. And in the when you were finding the sheds, how what kind of a diameter of a circle are we talking, or did his range tighten up the older that he got? And I guess the question I'm asking is, how close usually are those big buck sheds like that, or how close were his sheds to each other? I mean, was it give me a range of, distance in where you...
3 sets of those sheds were within 400 yards of each other. The other 2 sets were spread out with a square mile, just really rugged country, but that old buck would go back into that same general area year after year, logically, and shed those antlers. It was his home turf, I guess we could call it, and just amazing what these animals do, big bucks and big bulls, going back to certain locations where they like to winter and like to shed their antlers or renewal of growth.
Yeah, for sure. And the 2 times that you did see him in a mile, how far in miles was he from that area where he shed? I mean, did he travel long distances or a couple miles?
He was a random roamer, but it was such rugged country that he was within, where I saw him, within 4 miles of where those sheds were.
Gotcha. And the last set where the guy found the bones, had he really declined? How did his antler configuration from some of the sheds that you found? How did he end up on his last set?
He hadn't digressed that much. He was still, a phenomenal buck. If I remember right, that set was scored, I believe, at 264, which is still incredible. So as far as digression, he was going down some, but a few points, but his mass was still there.
How did he get the name Buck of Justice?
That's another unique story. I had spent years in this rugged, miserable desert terrain, and I had a couple of friends, and when we found those sheds, they said there's only one name for this buck, the Buck of Justice, because of all the time you had spent in there. So that's how he got his name.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And then your love for shed hunting and such, spending 10 years of your life, following one buck. Have you had other bucks? Is that kind of a one-time thing, and that's about the pinnacle of following a buck, or do you still to this day have bucks that you try and follow and pick up their sheds and try and figure out?
Well, I do. When I got into the guiding, it started to eat up a great deal of my time. But when I'm scouting in some of this country, I'll run on to big sheds. And in the early 90s, shed antler hunting wasn't that big. But as you know now, it's just went crazy. People everywhere love to get out and find big elk sheds and big deer sheds. But if I find a big deer shed that is really promising out in an area where I don't think is getting as much pressure, I'll go back there and concentrate on that area because I know there's a big buck living there. And I've just I've got some phenomenal other shed antlers that I've found over the years that you'll have to stop by my home someday and look at them. I mounted, actually had some of those mounted just because they're such special antlers. I thought that animal needed to be recognized in a mount. And that's been fun for me.
Absolutely. I saw you hunted Wyoming. I believe it was last year for Rocky Mountain bighorns. Tell me a little bit about that hunt.
But what an incredible experience. I've been putting in Wyoming for about 17 years, and the unit, a lot of people said, it's not as good a unit, and it's one of the more rugged units in the state. You may want to stay away from that, but I felt like a draw as I researched it, and that was Unit 1. And so it's in the Absaroka Mountains, which are very historical, rich in history, not only with our Native Americans, but with outfitters and guides. And so I started to research that, and I knew I was going to go do it alone, and not alone, but on my own, self-guided, because I had that kind of experience and know-how. But in Wyoming, to go into the wilderness areas, you have to have a Wyoming resident that actually has a guide license. And I just had a great friend whose wife I had guided on a desert hunt down here a few years ago, Lee Francis, who lives in Wyoming, and Lee had his guide license, and he said, anytime when you draw your sheep hunt up here, I'll go with you so that you can go into the wilderness. And so I took Lee with me and two other good friends from Utah, Steve Sorensen and Jason Jensen, and boy, we went in some 15 miles into the Absarokas, and as you probably heard, that particular area is relatively close to Yellowstone, and it has the highest concentration of grizzly bears in the U.S., and being kind of a desert boy down here in Utah, I'm not exactly used to grizzlies, but we saw a lot of grizzlies on that hunt. But it was just special because during the process of my hunt, we were on a mountain some 12,000 feet up and ran into this giant set of elk antlers that had been placed on a rock and had some rebar down through its skull. I had spotted those from several miles away, and that was actually a location where an old outfitter guide's family had taken that elk skull in and then had spread his ashes in what we felt like was a very sacred location. His daughter had left a really special note in a bottle, and I remember as we read that note, it meant a lot to all of us. We actually got tears in our eyes because how that family had recognized the final resting place of their dad, and then later I was able to actually take a phenomenal ram for Wyoming in that rough country, and so I actually highlighted that story in Western Hunter recently, and I appreciated Ryan Hatfield and the others involved in Western Hunter for actually not editing a lot of that story down, as a lot of magazines have to. They included almost all of it. So a special hunt for me.
Absolutely. And how many bighorns have you killed in your life, Randy?
When we're talking sheep, I get asked that question, and I've never been a person, who's actually put notches on a gun, so to speak, but I'm sure I'm probably up close to 150 when I'm counting the sheep that I've personally taken, along with everyone that I've guided. It's just been my privilege and honor to have spent time out on the mountain with so many incredible people. That's what I love about hunting.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Let's take another quick break here. Utah Hydrographics is in the water transfer printing service, and they are open to whatever you can dream up. Choose from a wide range of camo patterns, designs, and colors. Whether it's guns, bows, tools, rifle stocks, vehicles, steering wheels, fenders, dashboards, paint guns, fishing rods, cups, tripods, watches, knife grips, helmets for a local sports team or for your motorcycle, picture frames, mailbox, animal skulls, you name it, they can probably do it. Utah Hydrographics loves taking things that are general looking and turns them into something that looks fantastic and eye-popping. Give them a call and see what they can do for you and receive up to a 10% discount by using the JScott16 promo code. Visit them at utahhydrographics.com or on Instagram at Utah Hydrographics. Whether you are interested in elk, deer, antelope, bighorn sheep, or moose, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines will bring the adventure to your mailbox. These publications feature articles on the finest hunting gear, tips and tactics from experienced hunters, field judging trophies, glassing techniques, calling strategies, and much more. To become a more knowledgeable and skilled hunter, subscribe today. Go to westernhunter.net/jscott and enter your email address for a chance to win a $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product.
Randy, speaking of sheep, when you're looking at rams and evaluating rams, and every unit in every state and countries for that matter, everything's different. But when we're talking about desert bighorns, Rocky Mountain bighorn, California bighorn, can you give a little bit of advice to people listening as to what you look for as far as a ram, whether it be age and maturity, whether it be horn configuration, and such, as to what you're looking for when you draw a tag or a client draws a tag, or in the case of Wyoming, do you research, what rams have been taken, and then I'm trying to pick your brain as far as what you're generally looking for in a ram.
Well, for instance, in Wyoming, on that particular unit, if you can find a ram that scored from 162 to 170, you're doing well. Anything over 170 was icing on the cake. The bases with the Rocky Rams on that particular unit, I had researched, generally weren't, going to be 15 inches. And so I just wanted a ram that had age. I always, whether it's a desert ram or a Rocky Mountain ram, I always look for rams that are old and mature. But I look for a big hoop. I call it a high crown, where that horn goes up high and then back, because that's going to give you a little more length, and then drops below that jaw and turns up to the nose, and then carries the mass throughout. And so when we saw that ram up there, it had a big hoop. We saw it from miles away. I knew it had good mass, and so it was kind of a no-brainer. I knew that ram was going to score close to 170. When I finally took it, it was a 170 caliber ram, which I was excited about. If I'm hunting sheep in Utah, because the genetics are going to be different from what you experience in Arizona, in Utah, quite often we'll take a mature ram on some of these units that will score 155. And actually, it's an outstanding looking ram. It may not have bases that are 15 inches, and the ram won't have great length. But after that many years on units in Utah, you can just look at a ram and you know that it's mature, and it's just a ram you've got to shoot on that unit. Other units, for instance, in Utah, are capable of producing a 170 ram, and for a ram to get 170, you've got to have bases, that are close to 15 and length that's going to be close to 36 inches, and and then retain some good mass throughout. And it's a complicated process, as you know, but I always look for that big hoop with at least 36 inches in length, and then it turns up. And when I go down to Arizona, I've had the privilege last couple of years of helping some good friends down there who invited me down. The game changes even more and becomes much more complicated as you and all of the Arizona guides and outfitters know on sheep. You really got to study those rams down there and look for that exceptional mass out in the middle quarters and looking for length, 37 to 40 inches even down there. And it can become even more tricky. I think one mistake with sheep that I know that I've made throughout the years is sometimes you'll see a ram and it looks like it has a really big set of horns or tires on its head, and yet that particular ram may have a small body genetically and a smaller head in that particular unit. And so what I'm saying, if you get a ram that has a small body and a small head, the horns on that ram are going to look bigger because of the size of the animal. And then that it may not score as much as you thought. But if you can find a ram and it's got a big head with those big eye sockets that are up there high on the forehead towards the bases, and then it set of horns on its head, then you're probably that you've been searching for your client, especially if you're hunting in Arizona. Along with that, it's going to have some darn good length.
Yeah, for sure. I think for people listening, it's very important that you know the unit that you're hunting. And for me, Randy, I try and research and look at as many rams, get my hands on as many rams, look at as many photos of rams that have come out of that exact unit. And you hit the nail on the head in the bases. I think it's always important to know, because from unit to unit, state to state, it can really vary. And some units are known for 14-inch bases, some units are known for 15-inch bases, some units are known for 16-inch bases. And I think if you can get your hands on as many photos as possible, talk to as many people that have hunted in that unit and try and get all of the measurements, not just the bases, but get all of the quarter measurements and try and have photos. I know that's helped me a lot in trying to bounce, around in different units in Arizona. They're all different. And even say Western Arizona, desert sheep, some of the units are known for bigger bases, some are known for longer horns. Some, you have to take all the variables. And I think that's one of the things that really draws me to trying to learn more about field judging sheep, is that it can be very complicated. It can be very easy on one hand and very complicated on another. And I think sometimes, people make their hunt all about score. And I think that's unfortunate. But with that being said, and I was curious about your take on it, I feel like, being a sheep hunter, a lot of times that's part of the process of trying to learn everything there is to know about the animal, and about the unit that you hunt. So my question is, where do you think the happy medium is between trying to be efficient and be as good as you can at field judging and scoring, and still maintaining and having fun with the hunt, and not making, having the look of a ram be more important than the score of a ram?
Well, I think a lot of times that comes back to the hunter that you're with. over the years, I've just been with some incredible people, and some of those individuals, they weren't there strictly for the score. They were there for the overall encompassing experience. I had a hunter several years ago. He had been waiting to complete his Grand Slam for 30, 40 years, and he wanted a good, solid ram. He had hunted all over the world, but he also really appreciated the country they lived in, etc. And he and I, we spent 35 days all together. We looked at over 150 rams, and we were really looking for a ram over the 170 mark, and we perhaps passed a couple up early on that may have been close, but in the end, he took a great ram. I think it scored around 166. This was in Utah, not anywhere else, but he appreciated that hunt more than any other hunt that he had ever been on. Like I said, he had hunted all over the world, but he was there for the overall experience. And finding that happy medium, I guess it does come down to the individual hunter, Jay, but it's so much more for individuals like you and I and other sheep guides when the hunter sees a ram and it's just a ram they love the look of.
Yeah.
And they want to take it, and it doesn't matter if it's, say, going to score 185, 175, or 165. It's just a ram that has a unique look. They love the experience that they've been on, and they, when they choose to shoot a ram like that, I'll support them 100%. Any more, I really think the experience is so important to what we're out there on the mountain for. Scores, sure, but points shouldn't dictate what we're in the hunting business for.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like to tell people that I'm guiding, or people that I'm hunting with, that our goal is, I always try and set out to look at as many rams as I can, and I usually go in with the mindset of trying to film and photograph and get my eyes on every ram in the unit. And a lot of times that's kind of laughable. But then there's other times when literally, you can spend enough time and spend as many days as you possibly can and kind of taking a inventory of rams. And I feel like if you go into it with the mentality of trying to see every ram that you can, try and get photos of them, try and get video of them so you can evaluate them, you can get a catalog, so to speak, together and really, decide before your hunt, okay, this one's got, flare, this one's got drop, this one's got a high crown, this one's full curl, and then figure out which one you want to harvest. I think one mistake a lot of guys make is, they finally draw their once-in-a-lifetime type of sheep tag. And, I feel like guys shoot pretty early. They shoot in the first day or two. And maybe because the terrain is really tough and maybe the conditions aren't ideal, that, I just feel like a lot of people don't spend as much time possibly as they should. And I think another thing is, and I'm curious about your opinion on this, I feel like it's a once-in-a-lifetime hunt in most cases. For a lot of people, they feel like they see just a nice solid ram, and because of the terrain and because the densities sometimes aren't as high, a lot of times I think people get itchy to just want to harvest one because they feel like maybe they're not going to get another chance at that. And I was curious if you'd seen that in your guiding career.
I think a lot of hunters do get nervous because, as you stated, it is in most cases a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Some people have waited 30, 40 years to draw those permits, and And so they do get nervous. And I think as guides and outfitters, depending on the units that we were on, if we know that we can still find them a great ram and convince them to not get nervous. And of course, sometimes a lot depends on how much time they have. People just want to come in, get it done, and fly back to wherever they're from. It's just nice if where it's a once in a life experience, if they will find the time in their busy schedules to just enjoy that experience and listen to their guides and not get nervous, if we're confident that we can still find them a great representative ram. And you guys in Arizona, you have it tough in a lot of ways. Sure, you get to see quite a few rams, etc., but have such incredible genetics that sometimes there are such huge expectations from the hunters that it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on you guys down in Arizona. And boy, sometimes those rams down there, you've got incredible mass in those middle quarters, and it makes it hard to tell what your bases are because those rams are so massive in your middles. And so I admire all the work that you guys do down in Arizona. Your job is just as tough as mine. Up here, I'm backpacking in nowhere, and it's sometimes we don't see very many sheep. But on the other hand, you guys in Nevada and Arizona have it just as tough in many different ways.
For sure. Let's take a quick break here.
Have you guys heard about PhoneScope? PhoneScope is a privately held company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. Take digiscoping photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. PhoneScope is the future of digiscoping. Get yours now. Use the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope. Wilderness Athlete is committed to improving the health and quality of life for the outdoor athlete by providing field-tested, scientifically validated nutrition and sports performance products. Check them out at wildernessathlete.com and use the JScott promo code to receive 10% off any order.
Randy, I think you bring up a great point there of expectations, and I think you hit the nail on the head. In states where you have a lot of animals and you have high trophy quality, I think it's important to choose a guide that's willing to put in a bunch of time and potentially willing to let rams, really good rams, walk in order to really try and find something special. And I think you're exactly right when you say that, with our elk and our mule deer and our antelope and our sheep, I mean, Arizona has pretty darn good quality. And a lot of times, a kind of a funny story. Years ago, I was fortunate to hunt several years on the San Carlos Indian Reservation for elk, and I remember the last bull that I shot there was a 406 bull that I shot with my bow, and this guy called me on the phone and was asking me about my hunt and how'd it go. I said, oh, it was fantastic. It was great, and kind of a drought year, and shot a really, really good bull with incredible fronts, 25-inch thirds and 22-inch, firsts and seconds, and kind of petered out in the back. And, he said, what did it score? And I said, 406. And his exact words, I'll never forget it, were, that's it? and I think, people's expectations, and, it's like they just call their buddies and it's, what'd so-and-so shoot? What'd so-and-so shoot? And it just becomes a number. And I think the older I get, the more that, I want to make it about the experience as well. Not that I won't always try and do my very best and try and if I've got a client that's willing to really look at as many rams as possible, or as many bucks or bulls or whatever. But I think as a group in general, hunters, we have to really watch. I think it comes with maturity. I think the more mature I get, the more that I focus on the little things that matter. The sunsets and the sunrises and the pretty views, and the people that I'm with, and just getting to enjoy those animals. And what an opportunity we have here in the United States, and it's, especially in the Western United States, to have some unbelievable public land hunting. And I just encourage people out there to not make it about numbers all the time. And it's fine to be very precise and very efficient, and trying to field judge and know what you're doing, but don't make the whole hunt, the success of the hunt, based on whether something scores 100 or whether it scores 200, or a bull scores 400 or 390 or 340. I think it can ruin a lot of hunts, and it sets yourself up for any hunts after that, where you're basing your next success, is it better than the last one that I shot? And sometimes that's hard to do.
I agree, and appreciate every word that you said there, because that's exactly how I feel. We need, as hunters, if we're going to promote our hunting heritage, we've got to learn to smell the roses of that overall experience, and it can't be solely about points. We really hurt ourselves, I think, in this profession, with those people outside who really don't understand hunting, when they think, we're just pursuing a trophy animal just for points. It's not just about that, as you so aptly said, Jay. It's about that overall experience, the people you're with, the sunset, the sunrises, a storm that you survived out on the mountain, on and on and on. So I appreciate what you just said.
Randy, let's shift focus here a little bit. I know you're kind of a gear junkie, and like to try out gear and like to really push your gear and push yourself. Can you give me some pieces of equipment or gear that you've just found over the years that that you really like, and that you can, quote unquote, right now it's got your stamp of approval?
Well, I'm sure I'll hurt someone's feelings when I say these things, because there's a lot of great gear out there, as you know. But several pieces of equipment I can't go without. It's number one, a quality pair of optics, because of what I do, and a quality tripod. And I use, personally, I'm a Swarovski man. There's a lot of other great optics out there, and I generally use the 15s in sheep country. But I also have found, even if I have a pair of 10s, that if I'm using a quality tripod, it makes my job a lot easier. I'll find a lot more animals. And I use an outdoorsman tripod, but again, there's other good tripods that people use, and a lot depends if you're backpack hunting, or if you're on a horse, or if you have a vehicle, on the kind of a tripod that you use. But the other items of gear that I really have to have is a quality pair of boots now, Jay, and a quality backpack. And a lot of that is because of the country I'm in. But I love my KUIU backpacks, and I'm big on a lot of the KUIU hunting clothes, because it's for ultralight hunting, and I spend a lot of my time on backpack trips. But without a quality pair of boots, you're just not going to get into the country that you need to go into. And I know I found out I had a pair of boots on when I was down in Arizona last year, and on guiding some hunts in Sonora, and I had cactus spines going through the Teflon part of the outer sole into my foot, and so I have to be very careful on the equipment I choose for the kind of terrain that I'm going to be in. But that's some equipment that I've just absolutely got to have and can't go without, is quality optics, quality boots, and a quality backpack for myself personally.
Couple quick questions for you, Randy. So you use the 15s a lot on a tripod. Do you carry the 15s around your neck in a bino pouch, or do you carry a smaller optic? And I'm curious what optic power you carry around your neck mostly.
Because I'm out on those backpack trips on most of the units here in Utah, I am carrying the 15s around my neck. I've gotten used to it over the years. If I was hunting off of a four-wheeler or on old mining roads, etc., then I probably wouldn't wear them around my neck. I would have them where I could set up with that tripod really quick. I know that weight in an optics pouch might bother some people. It hasn't me. I've gotten used to that over the years. And yes, I do have that pair of 15s in a vinyl patch over my neck most of the time.
And so your logic with that is, if you're backpacking, carrying two pairs of binos way back in the backcountry is overkill and too much weight. So you're saying that you want to always have the 15s, and that even if you have to handhold them, you'll sacrifice a little bit of shaky, not being able to hold them as well as like 8s or 10s, but you're eliminating a couple pounds where you're not bringing a whole other set of binos.
Exactly, and one thing that I will do quite often is when I see a hillside or an animal that I want to glass, I use trekking poles a lot, and I will drop them in the sand or the rocks, put as a monopod underneath my pair of 15s, and it's remarkably steady until, if the animal is of the quality I want to put those in on the tripod and put my spotting scope on it, I can. But I'll use my trekking pole as a monopod to glass off of a lot of time, and it's remarkably steady with those 15s.
Another question I have for you is on the boots. Give me a couple of pairs of boots that you do like, as far as your everyday boots that you're wearing, guiding sheep hunters and such. What pairs of boots have you found that work best for your feet right now?
I'm a big fan of the Scarpa Canisius Pro and the Shormaz. I do use Crispy. Crispy isn't as well known as some of the other boot manufacturers. Crispy is an Italian company, and I really like the Crispy Spiders for the desert country. They fit my feet really well, and then I use the Zamberlan GTX Guides. Have been a great boot for me also. But again, I think it's so important for hunters when they're spending that kind of money on a pair of boots to be able to try those boots on if they can get a hold of a pair. Boots just fit people's feet differently. No foot is the same, and so that's why it's so important to be able to try that boot on, before you get out in the hills, when you're spending that kind of money. And that's three boot companies, three pairs of boots that I wear that have worked really well for me.
That's good stuff. Randy, what do you think the biggest mistake you've made on a hunt, and how and what did you learn from it, and how did it make you better by making that mistake, whether it was your own personal hunt or a guided hunt?
Well, that's just a great question. I think probably the most common mistake most of us as hunters have made is probably misreading the wind or our terrain. But I've made a lot of mistakes out there on the mountain over the years, and probably some of those as a sheep guide that has made me a better guide is I referred to this a little earlier, not recognizing, I think, Jay, that sometimes some desert rams have smaller bodies and smaller heads, which will make the horns look bigger. So again, that research on units and recognizing in sheep in particular, if they have a bigger body and a bigger head with those eye sockets, etc., then those horns are probably going to be just as big as what you think they are. But sometimes on units, whether it's in Utah, Nevada, or Arizona, you'll have some pygmy body genetics, which will make the horns look bigger than they really are. So that's a mistake that I try to do my research on and do a better job of. Another mistake I made over the years is if you spot a ram during the rut in the evening, you better try and make a move on it if you possibly can that night, because it's not going to be around the next day. It's those rams are moving, looking for ewes continually, and again, depending on the unit or if it's with a big herd of ewes, but I've made that mistake a couple of times over the years where I spotted a ram, thought I could locate it the next day. It was during the rut, and it just took off on me, and I never did find it again. And I think it's really critical that we know the terrain that we're guiding in. I've had several situations over the years where I didn't know the terrain I was in, and I started to make a stalk on an animal, and I ended up getting cliffed out or canyoned out, and had to reverse my course to make it work. And another mistake that sometimes we can make is overestimating the physical abilities or physical condition of our hunters. I try to always quiz my hunters and have a real keen understanding of what they can do physically and get them prepared for the hunt. If you overestimate what they can do physically, a lot of times you're going to shoot yourself in the foot when you're guiding a hunter.
Man, I think you gave some great advice there. One thing I'll bounce back to is you're talking about the size of rams' bodies. I think people could take this in a lot of animals, mule deer, coos deer, elk. I think body size and maturity sometimes range a lot. You can have, a buck that you think is really big or a ram that you think is really big, and then all of a sudden 3 more rams walk into the picture, into your field of view, and you realize that, the ram that you thought was really big, another ram comes stand right next to it, and it's, 4 inches taller, standing shoulder to shoulder, and, longer and, more of a pot belly. And it's happened to me on coos deer as well. You can get those pygmy bodied, just smaller bodied that, you would swear is a big, giant, mature, just really big buck, and all of a sudden, 5 bucks walk into your field of view, and the buck you've been looking at is the smallest one. So I think you bring up a great point there. I think it's important to always try and field judge your trophy that you're going to harvest. It's always nice to have it standing next to some other animals so that you can, kind of look at the body characteristics and make sure that, you're not going to make a mistake. The hardest animal to judge is one that's standing completely by itself. Whether it's an elk, a deer, or, whatever. When they're alone, it can be very, very deceiving. And I think those are all great tips that you bring up there. And just really appreciate you spending time with us today. Wondering if you have any concluding thoughts here before I let you go.
Well, I appreciate the time. I've enjoyed visiting with you very much. I guess I just believe with what we love to do, all of us, when it comes to hunting, Jay, that it's really critical that we continue to promote our hunting heritage in a positive way by the examples we set. Boy, in today's world, social media just went crazy, and I think quite often the public has been exposed to more of the negative stories, perhaps of someone who's been dishonest or unethical or untrustworthy, and then that gives a lot of us a black eye when we really didn't deserve it. So if our hunting heritage is really going to survive so that we can pass it on down to that younger generation, we just have to do a better job of the examples we set, and by educating those young hunters out there about what it means to be ethical and what it means to be a man and a woman of our word. I love what I do because the adrenaline rush that we all get out there on the mountain and seeing those people we're working with achieve success, because boy, they have sacrificed a lot in their lives, and that means a lot to me to see them successful, because I know they put a lot of sweat and blood and tears into those dreams. And once again, I just come back to what you and I both said earlier. Hunting is so much more than just the scores. It is about that encompassing experience and the sharing of information as we've done today, and stories, and making lifelong friendships. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, buddy. Look forward to having you on again, and want to encourage people to check out Randy's site at highdesertsheepguides.com. Is that the best way for people to learn more about you and find out how to get a hold of you, Randy?
Oh, they can, and they can always call me on my cell number, 435-908139. And I just like to go and spend time with good people out on the mountain, whether we're hunting, whether we're just looking at animals. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and there really are some just incredible people in our profession and what we do, and my life has been enriched by a lot of good people out there.
Well, you've certainly done a good job today on this podcast, and wish you the best of success, and maybe there'll be a chance I can look you up when I'm up there on the Beaver, and we can share a meal or something, and I look forward to it, and wish you a great hunting season and a good summer scouting here, and just enjoy it, and I look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much, Jay. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye.